Right guys, welcome to the MST Systems YouTube channel. Sorry that it's taken me so long to get another video up. It's been a bit of a nightmare to be honest with you, but we finally managed to wing my own setup in the house, so I should be able to put out regular content now. So this channel is going to be pretty much dedicated to strongman and strongwoman, hopefully education, but also I want to get to a few local comps. I want to be able to film some just some content on the strongman scene and get to different competitions, novice, intermediates, and some of the higher level comps, and just try and put out some content for the kind of general audience of strongman and strongwoman, because I don't think there's not really a channel out there that does anything really in the strongman scene, especially at novice level, amateur level, etc. And kind of document some of the competitions that go on. So I'm hoping to do that, as well as be a resource for strongmen and strongwomen to come and get some actual decent information, because the one thing the strongman scene is lacking is decent education on things like what we're going to talk about today. And last time I put out a video trying to educate people on drugs and stuff and PED application in strongman, it got a very negative response, weirdly, and it made me kind of think about whether or not I should do these videos or not. But then recent events in strongman and strongwoman and the amount of questions that I got and the amount of positive feedback I got off those videos as well kind of made me think, well, you know what, fuck yeah, I'll just keep on doing my thing. And some of the people that messaged me negatively about that drugs video, they're quite high up in the strongman world. So yeah, it was a bit of a weird response. It took me a little while to think about whether or not I wanted to do this or not. But I think that the strongman and strongwoman scene are vastly behind the times when it comes to drug application, nutritional application, and just general health and longevity protocols that they use, which is why all the strongmen look really old, and why a lot of the females that use PEDs have, viralizing, side effects from the usage of certain drugs. And I want to make sure that there's at least a little resource out there that people can go to basically get some decent information. So enough rambling, we'll get into the video. So a little disclaimer first of all, please do not take anything I say as absolute gospel. I'm not a doctor, I am not some pharmacologist that knows everything about these drugs. I am a strength and conditioning coach, strongman coach, and the things that I do are, I've applied these protocols and drugs to people for, how long have I been doing this now? Like 5 years full time I've been doing this. So I've got quite a lot of experience. I work with quite a lot of athletes and I've utilized some of these protocols with them. Note, I want to say this, some of my more popular female athletes, just so you know, I haven't even utilized some of these protocols with them. And this is the thing I want to stress first of all with this video, is we're going to be discussing PED application for females. I want to stress this point, okay? If you have not mastered your skill, if you have not got to the point that you are able to, do all these lifts, log presses, keg carries, yokes, farmers, etc. If you have not got to the point where you have mastered all these implements, then PEDs, well, some drugs will, that's a lie, but PEDs in general, anabolics, the drugs I'm going to recommend today, these are not going to help improve your skill acquisition. And there's a lot to learn in strongman and strongwoman, a heck of a lot. So if you've not mastered all these implements, if you don't know how to sprint with a yoke, if you don't know how to do a heavy yoke, if you don't know the difference between the two, if you don't know how to load stones, run with sandbags, etc., these drugs ain't going to teach you that. So you don't even need to go anywhere near them. Sometimes when I've spoke about PEDs before, people think, oh, well, if Shane's saying this, then it must mean that this athlete he trains is on it, etc. And don't try and connect dots, because you'll be wrong, trust me. Also, another thing to mention is that genetics play the biggest role in strength training. I've said it before, and I know that some people don't like that, but there are just some people out there that are not going to get as strong as other people. It's just the way it is. There are also people out there that are freaks and will get stronger than someone else on anabolics. They're naturally gifted. They're naturally just designed to move big weight and are going to have a higher strength potential than other people. It's just the way it is, guys. But with these protocols that I'm going to talk about today, they're going to be able to make you, the individual, extract the most out of your own body and your own genetics and stay as safe as possible. So first of all, when it comes to females and PEDs, I like to do two things. I like to have a background baseline drug cycle and a strength peaking cycle. And I believe that this is the safest way for females to utilize their performance enhancing drugs. So if we have a background cycle, what I mean by that is a cycle that is a year long. Well, technically it's indefinite, but we'll call it a year for the sake of the video. So a year long cycle. Now for a female to do a year long cycle, you need to pick drugs that are very safe. They're not going to have any negative side effects per se, and I say that with quotation marks, because every single drug you utilize that is performance enhancing is going to have some kind of negative feedback down the line. It's just the way it is, guys. If you're going to get into this sport and utilize PEDs, you need to accept that risk. So I'm not going to stand here and say that, although I believe this protocol to be one of the safest you could do as a female and still enhance your performance massively, it's never going to be side effect free. Also, genetics and environment, e.g. your health, are going to affect how every drug works. Drugs always work based upon environment. So when you introduce a drug, for example, if you have poor cardiovascular health and you're overweight and you don't know anything about your blood levels, you don't know if you've got healthy kidneys, etc., and you introduce these drugs in and you have kind of a negative environment, then these drugs will react differently to somebody who has good nutrition, good cardiovascular health, good blood levels, just a healthy person in general. So health is always number one in Strongman and Strongwoman, because if you introduce drugs into a healthy environment, they're going to react positively instead of negatively. So it's important to remember that before you start. So when we start with this baseline background cycle for females, most females, when they first get into PEDs, they say to me, Shane, I've been told to take Anavar. No, don't do that. Don't do that at all. Do this, okay? Because this is going to be so much safer than that. The problem with Anavar, well, I'm going to talk about Anavar in a minute, actually. I'll end up rambling. So I'm going to stick with my baseline cycle. So females, the first drug I would introduce for a female is Metformin. Now, Metformin is a drug that is prescribed for pre-diabetics. And first of all, what's it going to do for a strong woman? It's going to help their body composition. It's going to help keep their blood levels in a healthy range. And think of it as this kind of like longevity drug. It's going to keep you healthy, and like I just mentioned, being healthy is going to be synergistical with all the other things we're going to do. It's also going to help your ability to utilize carbohydrates, which means that for a weight class strong woman in the 63s or 82s, it's going to mean they're going to be able to eat more carbohydrates and more calories in their off season whilst maintaining closer to their competition weight. Once you're eating more food, you're going to be able to perform better in the gym, you're going to be able to recover better, and just in general, Metformin is an amazing drug for females. You only need about 250 milligrams a day to have profound effects in females. It is much stronger in females than in males. So Metformin is always my first go-to for females. Now, something I want to talk about, just in case we've got anybody on here that comments this, is a common thing that in the bodybuilding community is people talk about muscle loss due to the decrease in IGF-1 levels from metformin use. Go back to what I said at the start. All these studies are done on pre-diabetic, overweight, older people. And although the studies do show that, I just believe that it is completely environment-based. It is completely to do with that. Like you get a 6-year-old woman in a study that's overweight, never done cardio in her life, she's got all these health conditions and she's being prescribed metformin, and then she's going to get these outcomes that happen from it. Whereas we're introducing it to a younger female who is an athlete, they have good nutrition, they take care of themselves, they have good cardiovascular health. The effect of the drug's completely different. So I wouldn't confuse the study so much with what's going to happen to yourself, because drugs change based on environment. Just remember that. So Metformin is going to act completely differently in an athlete as opposed to, the people that they've utilized in these studies. So let's introduce Metformin first of all at 250 milligrams instead of an Anavar. Trust me, much better decision. Now, like I say, this cycle is something that we're going to plan to be on for a long period of time. So 250 milligrams a day of Metformin, we can run this safely for the whole training year, or if you wanted to extend it, until you decided to not compete in Strongwoman, or maybe you just want some time off everything, you can run this indefinitely. Let's say that. Now, The next drug that I would introduce is a Clenbuterol. Now, your Clenbuterol is something that is kind of known as a fat loss drug in the bodybuilding community, which it is a beta agonist, so it will increase your heart rate, it will increase your basal metabolic rate slightly. It does this by increasing like adrenal stimulus and norepinephrine and stuff into the bloodstream. So it is a minor anabolic, and this is why we want to introduce it, because it is very, very mild, and we can run this year round again. So if we use Clenbuterol about 10 to 30 milligrams maximum, I would probably stress lower than 30 milligram, but I have had some if you've got a slightly larger body weight, maybe if you're over 85, 90 kilo body weight, you could potentially go up to 30 milligram, but in general, 20 milligram and below. Introducing the Clenbuterol at 20 milligrams a day, year round, will have a ability for the athlete to stay closer to their, because this is a lot of these drugs help with the weight class issue. I see a lot of girls struggling to make weight, struggling to stay close to their weight class in the off season. And it's really hard to stay on a restrictive diet as a strength athlete. You need to be able to push the diet to get stronger. So the Clenbuterol at 20 milligrams will help you eat more food, keep the body fat down, whilst being mildly anabolic and helping you gain muscle tissue and strength. The increase in the strength is going to come from the fact that it's increasing that norepinephrine and adrenal count in the bloodstream. It's going to be able to make you have higher contraction rates. It's just going to be really great for a strength athlete, and because it's so mild, you can keep it in year round, and it's not like you're going to go into every session every week thinking you're an animal. It's very subtle, especially at 20 milligrams, very subtle, but we can keep it in for that long period of time, so that over the course of a training year, you might gain 20 more kilos on one of your lifts, or you might gain 2 or 3 pounds more muscle over a training year. So think of it as a very subtle addition to your kind of PED stack. The next one I would recommend is a growth hormone. Now, growth hormone in Strongman and Strongwoman, kind of, people think of it as a step up from testosterone, or a step up from a Clenbuterol or Metformin. They think of the growth hormone, just because of the name, they think it's this like really extreme drug, when realistically, especially at low dose, it's very mild, but it has amazing benefits again for strong women. So if we were to run 1 IU of growth hormone a day, what this is going to do is it's going to enable you to recover from your session so much faster. It's going to, another thing it's going to do is help with your fat deposits as well. It's going to help you use more body fat as energy, especially if you take it in the AM fasted. And if you, in conjunction with Metformin, Clenbuterol and GH together, they're very synergistic at enabling a female to gain muscle tissue very slowly over the course of a year, but much faster than natural. It's going to help you get stronger slowly over the course of a year, because they're so synergistical together. These drugs work amazingly. I call them like the holy trinity for females. Metformin, Clenbuterol and GH, great combo. It's also going to help with one of the most common issues strong women and strong men get is niggles, injuries, little just issues that crop up that restrict you from training. It's going to increase your recovery from these niggles and injuries, just dramatically. And a lot of people will go in and take BPC 157 and other peptides to help with their kind of healing once they get a niggle or injury, to get back into heavy training quickly. If you just run this background dose of GH year round, you're going to get a whole host of benefits, and one of them is going to be, the healing and recovery from niggles and injuries. So they're my 3 drugs that I would say to keep as a baseline background cycle. Now, you could completely just stick with these 3 drugs, but there is a 4th drug I want to talk about that I'm kind of slightly on the fence with, I guess, but there's multiple different ways to utilize it in this baseline background cycle to make it very effective for strong women. And that is a PPAR agonist, Cardarine, or GW501. Now, the reason why I'm kind of a bit in betweeny on it is I used to be a real big fan of it, but the more I've read into it, I was going to say research, but I hate that word. The more I've read into it, I'm kind of a bit unsure now. But I still think it has such amazing performance benefits that it should be considered at least. And I think that you as the athlete should take ownership as to doing your own reading and your own research into it and decide whether or not you want to add it in. So the PPAR receptor that it agonizes is an extremely complex receptor. It does so many different things that we don't actually know 100% what it does. Now, in terms of the benefits you will get as an athlete, it is extremely good at increasing your work capacity. Like literally you can take a cardarine tablet and the next day you can be able to do more work. You'll be cardiovascularly fitter. You will be able to handle more work in the gym. You'll be able to recover better between sets, recover better between sessions, etc. It does this by decreasing the amount of glucose uptake and increasing the amount of fats that are used as energy, which gives you your slow twitch fibers basically, enhancement and ability to work better. It has a real immediate effect, which is why it's so noticeable, and especially in certain phases of training, it can be amazingly synergistical with, say, an aerobic block or a high volume block, whatever you want to refer to it as, however you structure it. But again, it is a complex pathway, and it has been shown in studies to be able to increase the growth of cancer cells. But again, in other studies, it's been shown to reduce cancer. I can't remember which way around it is. Let's say, for example, reducing breast cancer, increasing skin cancer chances. Something that's not exact, by the way, but this is what I mean by it's very complex. Like all these different things happening that it's very hard to pinpoint what's actually going on. It's a very complex receptor site. Now, metformin has been shown in studies to help combat 2 or 3 of the negative pathways that can crop up with the PPAR agonist cardarine. So this is why introducing this into this stack and having 4 drugs instead of 3, the metformin reducing the negative effects of the cardarine, but also the clenbuterol, the beta agonist, is going to increase your heart rate ever so slightly. Now, although this is somewhat of a good thing for the kind of fat loss benefits, long term you don't really want to be increasing your heart rate year round. So cardarine will actually reduce your resting heart rate. I know this for a fact because I wear a rope strap. I love this thing, and it tracks my resting heart rate. And my resting heart rate when on cardarine will drop. And when I say resting heart rate, I mean your average across the day. So not just when I'm sleeping, not just at rest, sat here chilled. I'm talking about the whole day, 24/7. My average heart rate drops about 15 beats per minute when I'm on cardarine. Now, if you were to take clenbuterol, I've never actually done this myself, but I imagine you might get 20 milligrams a day. You might have a 5 to 10 beats per minute increase in heart rate. So the cardarine is very synergistical with that because it will help bring it down. Again, it just adds in this nice synergistical background cycle we can use as a strong woman to really help with body fat percentage, keeping it low, being able to eat more food and the nutrient partitioning being high so that you can ramp the food higher whilst maintaining close to weight class body weight. The GH is going to increase your recovery from session, increase your ability to use body fat as energy if you take it in the AM fasted. It's important to note with GH, you can utilize it 2 ways. You can take it in the morning fasted and then do some cardio or you're training and you'll help burn some body fat off, or you could take it post-workout or pre-bed and increase your recovery from the actual training session. Anyway, with the cardarine, there's multiple different ways to utilize it. If you wanted to, you could use it year round as well. Although I would probably advise not to do that. I would probably advise you to use it in, let's just say use it sparingly. So use it in phases of training where you're gonna get the most benefits. So if you're in an aerobic training phase or a high volume training phase, throw in the cardarine at 10 milligrams a day. You'll get crazy benefits from it. You'll notice it straight away. You'll be in the gym and you'll be like, Jesus Christ, I'm a savage. I just did 7 reps and I'm recovered in 15 seconds. It's really good, crazy good. But then you could remove it when you went into a more peaking phase where you might be taking 3 to 5 minutes rest between sets. Maybe you don't need it then, so take it out. Or if you're going up to a competition, you could maybe just run it up to competitions. Again, with cardarine, do your own reading and make your own decision with that. I would say metformin, CLEN and GH, they're all good in my opinion. I've seen multiple people, literally probably, maybe not 100, but must be getting up close to 100 now, people utilize this these three drugs together and get amazing results with very, very, very minimal. I can't even think of a time the only thing I've found is people with CLEN get a little bit shaky sometimes, even at 20 milligrams. So you can actually start at 10 or 5, just literally get a tablet and break it up, and just slowly increase it over the course of a couple of weeks, and you shouldn't really get those issues. But that's the only thing I found with the CLEN. But the metformin and metformin as well, actually, to be fair, metformin can in some people cause some GI stress if you take it on an empty stomach. Always take your metformin at night with after a big meal. Metformin has a very long half-life, so you don't need to time it or anything. As long as you're taking it daily, then you will be working perfectly fine. So let's just round this off. So the background baseline cycle that I would recommend is 250 milligrams of metformin, 20 milligrams of clenbuterol, 1 IU of GH a day. Now I would do that indefinitely throughout your training year. The cardarine, I would recommend you added that in training phases where or pre-competition or both. You could run it year round, or you could also do a week on, not week on, but weeks on. So make your own strategy up. 5 on, 10 off, 5 on, 10 off. You could do that, for example. Now, once you've got your baseline structure laid out with your cycle, you could just do that. You could do that for 6 months and just, this could be your first cycle, and you could see, let's see what happens in 6 months. And that would be totally fine. You will have so many more benefits than natural, and you will have absolutely minimal side effects, I promise you. But if you wanted to go into a strength peak, so let's say you'd run this little baseline cycle for 4 months, and then you had a big competition coming up, and you wanted to do 6 weeks worth of a stronger anabolic than CLEN to peak to your competition, or maybe a peak in a lift or whatever it is. I would drop the CLEN out first of all, because CLEN's your kind of main anabolic there, and you're going to replace it with something stronger. So I would just say to remove the CLEN. Now, once you remove the CLEN, you need to add in a stronger anabolic. And this is where you could take Anavar, and this is where I'm going to ramble about Anavar for 10 minutes. So Anavar is the most widely recommended drug for females, and it is, I'll be honest with you, it's brilliant. If you just run, in fact, if this next point I'm going to make didn't exist, I would probably recommend you to run 2.5, 3 milligrams of Anavar, like 2 to 3 milligrams of Anavar a day in the background with this baseline drug cycle. I would actually say that if you were to do very, very, very low dose Anavar, you could run it year round. But here's the problem with Anavar. It's near enough, in my opinion, and from my experience, near enough impossible to get legit, proper Anavar. It's impossible. In the UK anyway, I have never seen it. It's always combined with, it's got some T-bol in it, or some Winstrol in it, or something, or the dosage is completely off what it says. Which is the reason why I just don't like Anavar for females, is because it's so risky. Unless you know for a fact that it is properly dosed Anavar, or you can get it sent off and tested, I think you're just making a big risk, to be honest with you, and I wouldn't recommend it. But if you can get proper Anavar, then if you wanted to do a strength peak, you could add it in at, say, 5 to 7 milligrams a day for 6 weeks up to a comp. I know I said 2 to 3 before, but that's if you were to run it in this background baseline cycle here. When you're doing a strength peak, you need a slightly higher dose. So 6 weeks of Anavar at 5 to, let's say 5 to 10 for the sake of round numbers, 5 to 10 milligrams will be, totally fine. And if you can't get stronger in 6 weeks off that of Anavar, then your nutrition, your training is shite, you need to sort that. But I don't often recommend Anavar because I feel as though you can't, in the UK, you can't get a properly dosed, legit source of Anavar. I have never managed to get one anyhow. So, I like SARMs. A lot of people hate SARMs. There are going to be a couple of people that watch this that also hate them, and they've got a massive opinion on them. But like I say, I've been utilising them with people for a very long time. Seen lots of blood work, and yeah, I don't think they're so bad. I'm okay with them, especially for females. So the first one I would look to add in is Ostarine. This is the most mild introduction to SARMs, and I just think that females react so well to Ostarine. It's not as effective in men, but in females, I just think it's crazy. The strength gains that I've seen females get from Ostarine, yeah, crazy. 10 to 20% increases on some lifts within a 6 to 8 week period. I find it's extremely mild. It doesn't really affect blood levels too much. It does have a little bit of effect on your cholesterol levels, but the Metformin is great at keeping your lipid levels healthy, and it can almost offset the Ostarine. So I would say to start with an Ostarine, very low dose for 6 to 8 weeks. And yeah, that would be my first kind of thing that I would add in if you hadn't run anything before. So you would drop your CLEN and you would add in, say, 10 milligrams of Ostarine. You could definitely bump that up a little higher, but I always like to start reserved. So let's say you planned 8 weeks, you could maybe start at 10 milligrams. After 4 weeks, up it to 20 for the last 4, and then I would get rid of it. Now, once you came off the Ostarine, you could add the CLEN back in and then just go back to your baseline cycle. Now, the next thing that I would add in that is the step up from Ostarine, well, it's probably 5 steps up from Ostarine, to be honest with you, is a RAD 140. Now, if you look into RAD 140 on YouTube, or you just research kind of, you know, common bodybuilding channels, RAD 140 is an on-the-fence drug for some people when it comes to females, but for me personally, I think that it's just extremely effective at making people strong. And at the end of the day, we've got to separate ourselves from the bodybuilding community because our goal is performance-based, not kind of, you know, physique-based, so to speak. Although it's still got, obviously, muscle growth has a huge role in strength potential. So we still need to take it into account. That's why CLEN and GH and Metformin are so good together as this background player, because we're able to build more muscle over the training year, which increases your potential strength output so much. But anyhow, RAD 140 is amazing for strength in females, and you only need to utilize it for a very short period of time, which is why I like it. You can do a 3-week cycle of RAD 140 at very low dose and get extremely strong, or you can drag it out to 6 weeks. 6 weeks is usually the longest I recommend on RAD. I have had some females run it a touch longer, but that was only just because of the way competition season lined up and things, and it just, you know, I didn't really want to do it, but we did, and blood work and stuff still came back all good, but I would say to, you know, use it longer than 6 weeks very sparingly. Don't do that very often. 3 weeks I find is totally fine, and the way I would dose RAD 140 for a female is 10 milligrams a day, every other day for the first week, and then 10 milligrams a day for the next 2 weeks. If you are over, say, 90 kilo body weight, you could go a touch higher with that, but I wouldn't do that for much longer. Let's say you're running 4 weeks of it, and that's when you had your competition. You might do every other day, 10 milligrams for the first week, every day for the next 2 weeks, and then on the final week, you could do 20 milligrams a day for the last 7 days, but then I would cut it off. So they are my, I think that's everything I've gone over. Yeah, they are my full list of drugs that I would recommend, but their honourable mention needs to go, what are you doing, girl? Sorry, my dog's bloody walking around back there. Come here, Belle. Come on. Come here. Come up. There she is. And say hello. You see her? Hello. On the YouTube. So an honourable mention needs to go to testosterone. Now the reason why I say honourable mention is because I have been reading into this drug for probably the last 3 to 4 months, and before I would ever tell an athlete to use something, I make sure I do a lot of reading. I speak to a lot of people who've used it, and I try it myself, and I'll utilize it with someone first of all that I will let them know I'm kind of gonna be not experimenting, so to speak, but I think this is fine, and I want to test it. Is it okay? they will say yes. I haven't even got to that point yet. So basically, I have not tried this with anyone, but I do know that in the bodybuilding community, it's very well received. It's, you know, the blood levels in females seem to stay extremely healthy. It has no effect on FSH or LSH. And people seem to get a good anabolic response from it. I don't know how good it is for strength though, which is why I say honorable mention. Because whenever people talk in the bodybuilding community about certain drugs, I always have to kind of translate it into strength training terms and performance as an athlete. So for me, testosterone should be fine. But like I say, I haven't actually had the experience yet with it to basically 100% recommend it. In my opinion, to kind of like condense this video and round it out for you, if you stick to very minimal usage of the strength peak drugs, which are Anavar, if you can get good Anavar, Rad 140, Ostarine, and potentially testosterone, then you will have a really beneficial cycle that you'll have built that will have minimal side effects. There are other stronger drugs that you can add in, like Nandrolone, for example, is very well received in females. But for me personally, I think that if you stick to your Metformin, your CLEN, your GH, and your Cardarine as your baseline cycle year round, and throw in a Rad 140, I personally think that you get more strength gains than what you will if you just threw in a Nandrolone, for example. What I will say though, is always remember that you will react to certain drugs in a certain way, as the individual, I mean. So there are other drugs that you can utilize that are safer for females. Like I say, Nandrolone, it seems to be well received. Turinabol, again, seems to be somewhat well received. I would stay away from Anadrol as well. Anadrol is a DHT, but Anadrol actually acts more like a Nandrolone. So Anadrol, weirdly, you know, people would think that sounds like a, you know, far-fetched drug test, but Anadrol seems to be well received in females as well. I would say to experiment with these drugs if you that way inclined, and see which you react to best. But remember that all these drugs would only be added in for a strength peak, and they're for a very acute period of time. They're for a very small period of time, so they're for a couple of weeks here and there. We don't want to add them in for months on end. I would say though, stick with your Rad, stick with your Ostarine, because we know with a SARM, you know what you're getting, you know what the dosage is, you know it's correct. The only thing we don't know is these haven't been researched or utilized for as long a period or as much as the other anabolics, which is why some people are on the fence about them. But personally, from all the anecdotal evidence that I've seen, I think they're fine. I think they're all right. I don't think they're so bad, do we, girl? No. And that's pretty much everything. Hopefully this gives you a bit of an overview into what you can potentially do as a female that is a little bit different to the advice most people will give us to take some Anavar. And hopefully it strays you away from Anavar and makes you understand why it's not the best thing to start with. And also why 6 weeks worth of drugs isn't the best. You know, we want to go with a baseline background cycle. So yeah, that's everything. We'll wrap up the video there. If you like the video, it will really help with trying to grow this channel. If you can leave a comment as well and subscribe, that'd be awesome. And I will get cracking with some other videos, won't we, girl? You gonna join in for another one? Bella's gonna join in for another one. It's all right, won't it, little girl?